I'll never forget the look on my brother's face when his future father-in-law asked to speak with me privately. Not with him. With me. The sister he'd spent the last 8 years calling a hobby worker. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story starts 3 months earlier at what was supposed to be a casual family dinner. The kind where everyone pretends everything is fine while passive-aggressive comments fly across the table like shrapnel. My brother Marcus had just gotten engaged to Vanessa, this beautiful, polished woman who worked in corporate marketing. And from the moment he announced it, he made sure everyone knew he'd upgraded his life. Better job, better apartment, better future in-laws. And apparently, a better understanding of what counted as a real career. I should probably explain what I do. I'm a wildlife rehabilitation specialist and conservation photographer. I work with injured raptors, eagles, hawks, owls, nursing them back to health and releasing them into the wild. I also document endangered species for scientific journals and conservation organizations. I have 2 master's degrees. I've published in National Geographic. I've worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I've given talks at international conservation conferences. But to my family, especially Marcus, I was the girl who played with birds and took pictures for Instagram. So there we were, sitting around Mom's dining table. Mom had made her famous pot roast. Dad was asking Marcus about his new position as a senior financial analyst. Vanessa was showing Mom her ring for the 3rd time. And I was just there. "So, how's the bird thing going?" Marcus asked, not even looking up from his plate. I could have corrected him, said it was wildlife rehabilitation, not the bird thing. But I'd learned years ago that correcting Marcus only made things worse. "It's going well," I said evenly. "We just released a pair of bald eagles last week. It was—" "That's nice," he cut me off. Then he turned to Dad. "So Dad, Vanessa's father wants to meet you and Mom. He's a thoracic surgeon at Presbyterian, really successful guy. I think you'll like him." There it was. That emphasis on successful. Vanessa smiled politely, but I caught something in her expression, discomfort maybe, or embarrassment. "A surgeon," Mom said, impressed. "That's wonderful, Marcus." "Yeah," Marcus continued, gaining steam, "Dr. Richard Chen. He's published over 100 papers, teaches at the medical school, sits on like 5 boards. The man's a legend in his field." He paused, then glanced at me with this smirk I knew too well. You know, someone who built a real career, not just a passion project that barely pays the bills. The table went silent. Dad cleared his throat. Mom suddenly became very interested in her green beans. Vanessa looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. I felt my face flush, but I kept my voice steady. "My work pays just fine, Marcus. And it contributes to actual scientific research and species preservation. But sure, if you measure success purely in dollar signs and social status, then I suppose I'm just playing around." "I'm not trying to be mean," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'm just saying, at some point, you need to think about stability. A real salary, benefits, a career that people actually respect." "Marcus," Vanessa said quietly, touching his arm. But he was on a roll now. "I mean, what's your retirement plan? What happens when you're too old to chase birds around forests? Have you thought about that?" I set down my fork carefully, fighting the urge to throw my wine in his face. "I have thought about it, actually. I have a 401k, health insurance through my organization, and I've been building a consulting side of my business that's already bringing in 6 figures annually. But thanks for your concern." That last part was maybe a bit petty, but I was done being dismissed. Marcus blinked. 6 figures? "Yes, Marcus. Conservation organizations pay well for expertise, especially when you're one of the leading raptor specialists in the region and your photography has been featured in major publications." The silence that followed was delicious, but Marcus, being Marcus, couldn't let it go. "Well," he said, recovering, "I'm sure it's fulfilling and all. I just think there's a difference between a job and a career. a profession that people actually understand and respect. And there it was. The real issue wasn't money or stability. It was that my brother was embarrassed by what I did. 2 weeks later, Marcus called me, which was unusual because we typically only communicated through family group texts and the occasional obligatory birthday message. "Hey," he said, his voice doing that fake casual thing. "So, Vanessa's parents want to do a dinner, getting the families together before the wedding." "Okay," I said slowly. "It's going to be at their house. Pretty fancy. Her dad's kind of formal. Just wanted to give you a heads up." "Thanks for the warning," I said, already dreading it. "And maybe," he paused, "maybe don't talk too much about work. Dr. Chen is really accomplished, and I don't want things to get awkward if he starts asking about careers and stuff." I felt my jaw tighten. "You want me to lie about what I do?" "Not lie, just maybe keep it vague. Say you work in environmental services or something. I just don't want him to think our family is." "Is what, Marcus? Not impressive enough for his daughter?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" He sighed, exasperated. "Look, can you just do this for me? Please? This dinner is important. These are important people." I should have said no. I should have told him exactly where he could shove his request. But this was still my brother. And despite everything, some part of me still wanted his approval. Still wanted him to see me as an equal, as someone worth being proud of. So I said yes. The Chen house wasn't just nice, it was an estate. 3 stories of modern architecture tucked into the hills, with a circular driveway, perfectly manicured gardens, and a view that probably cost more than most people's houses. Mom and Dad pulled up in their sensible sedan, looking as out of place as I felt. I'd driven separately, already planning my escape route. I dressed carefully for this. Professional but not trying too hard. Black slacks, a silk blouse, subtle jewelry. I'd even tamed my usually wild hair into something resembling sophistication. Marcus and Vanessa met us at the door. Marcus gave me a once-over and nodded approvingly, which somehow made me feel worse. "Remember," he whispered as we walked in, "just be normal." I didn't ask what he thought abnormal would look like. The interior was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors, original artwork, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was clean lines and muted colors, the kind of place where you were afraid to touch anything. Vanessa's mother, Patricia, greeted us warmly. She was elegant and gracious, immediately putting Mom at ease with compliments about her dress and questions about the pot roast recipe from our previous dinner. But it was Dr. Richard Chen who commanded the room. He was in his early 60s, distinguished in that way successful doctors often are. Silver hair, sharp eyes, a handshake that was firm but measured. He wore casual expensive, a sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent paired with tailored slacks. "Welcome," he said, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone used to life or death decisions. "We're so pleased to finally meet Marcus's family." We made it through introductions and small talk. Patricia gave us a tour of the house, while Dr. Chen and Marcus talked about Marcus's work in finance. I caught Marcus throwing me warning looks every time I opened my mouth, so mostly I just smiled and nodded. Dinner was served in a dining room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. The table was set like something from a magazine spread. Multiple forks, wine glasses I was afraid to pick up, food that was more art than sustenance. And then, inevitably, the conversation turned to careers. "So," Dr. Chen said, looking at Dad, "Marcus tells me you're in manufacturing." Dad nodded, sitting a bit straighter. "Quality control supervisor, been with the same company for 32 years. "Excellent. Loyalty and consistency are admirable qualities." Dr. Chen turned to Mom. "And you work in education?" "Elementary school teacher," Mom said proudly. "3rd grade, 28 years." "Wonderful. Teachers don't get nearly enough credit for their work." His gaze shifted to me. "And you must be I apologize. Marcus mentioned you, but I'm afraid I don't recall what you do. I felt Marcus tense beside Vanessa. This was my cue to be vague. To say environmental services and move on. But something in Dr. Chen's genuine interest, the way he'd acknowledged my parents' work with real respect, made me pause. I'm a wildlife rehabilitation specialist, I said clearly. I work primarily with raptors, birds of prey. I also do conservation photography and consulting. I waited for the dismissive response, the polite smile that meant, how quaint. Instead, Dr. Chen's eyebrows rose with what looked like actual interest. Raptors? That's fascinating. What kind of rehabilitation work? Marcus jumped in quickly. It's basically like a wildlife rescue thing. She helps injured birds. It's very nice, very noble work. His tone was so condescending I wanted to kick him under the table. But Dr. Chen ignored him, still looking at me. What species do you work with most commonly? Red-tailed hawks, bald eagles, great horned owls, peregrine falcons. I said, warming to the subject despite myself. We get a lot of collision injuries, birds that hit power lines or windows, some gunshot wounds, though those are usually fatal. Occasionally we get orphan chicks or birds affected by rodenticides. Rodenticides? Patricia asked. Rat poison, I explained. When rodents eat poison and then raptors eat those rodents, they get secondary poisoning. It causes internal bleeding, very difficult to treat, though we've had some success with vitamin K therapy if we catch it early enough. Dr. Chen was nodding thoughtfully. I imagine the anatomy must be incredibly complex. The respiratory system alone, birds have that unique flow-through lung structure, don't they? I blinked, surprised he knew that. Yes, exactly. It makes anesthesia particularly challenging. Their air sacs extend throughout their body cavity, even into the bones. You have to be incredibly careful with dosing. Do you handle the medical treatment yourself? I work closely with our veterinary team, but yes, I'm certified to perform certain procedures. Wound care, fracture stabilization, fluid therapy, tube feeding. Anything more complex requires our avian vet. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. This conversation was going way off his script. It sounds like fascinating work, Dr. Chen said. Very specialized. Where did you study? I have my undergraduate degree in wildlife biology from Colorado State and 2 master's degrees, one in wildlife rehabilitation and one in conservation photography from University of Montana. 2 master's degrees, he repeated, and I couldn't tell if he was impressed or just making conversation. Marcus laughed awkwardly. Yeah, she's definitely the academic one in the family. I was always more practical, focused on business and finance. The implication being that my education was impractical, unnecessary. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I see. And the photography aspect, is that purely documentation or do you do artistic work as well? Both, I said. I do scientific documentation for research purposes, but I also sell prints and license images to publications. I've been fortunate enough to have my work published in National Geographic, Audubon magazine, and several international conservation journals. Vanessa's eyes widened. National Geographic? That's amazing! Why didn't you mention that before? I shrugged, very aware of Marcus's death glare. It doesn't usually come up. National Geographic doesn't publish just anyone's work, Dr. Chen observed. Their standards are exceptionally high. You must be quite talented. She's won some awards, Mom added, unable to help herself despite Marcus's increasingly frantic, subtle head shakes. Tell them about the Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition. Mom, I started. What about it? Patricia asked warmly. I was a finalist a few years ago, I admitted. Didn't win, but it was an honor to be selected. What I didn't mention was that there were over 50,000 entries that year, and being a finalist meant I was in the top 50 globally. But that felt like bragging. Dr. Chen, however, seemed to understand the significance. Wildlife Photographer of the Year is one of the most prestigious competitions in the world, he said, looking at me with what I could only describe as newfound respect. Being a finalist is an extraordinary achievement. Marcus practically choked on his wine. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Dr. Chen kept asking me questions. About my work with the Fish and Wildlife Service, about my consulting projects, about a recent paper I'd co-authored on the effects of climate change on raptor migration patterns. Every time Marcus tried to redirect the conversation to his work, to his accomplishments, Dr. Chen would politely acknowledge it and then turn back to me. It wasn't that he was being rude to Marcus. He was perfectly cordial. He just seemed more interested in what I had to say. Patricia, too. She asks about my photography, and when I mentioned I had a gallery show coming up, she immediately asked for details, insisting they would attend. Vanessa was beaming, clearly thrilled that her family was connecting with me. She kept shooting Marcus these happy looks, like this was all going exactly as she'd hoped. Marcus, meanwhile, looked like he was being slowly digested by a python. After dinner, Patricia suggested coffee in the living room. Dr. Chen excused himself briefly, and I took the opportunity to escape to the bathroom. I needed a minute. This was not how I'd expected the night to go. When I came out, I found Dr. Chen waiting in the hallway, looking at a painting. "Ah," he said, noticing me. "I was hoping to catch you for a moment, privately." My stomach dropped. Here it comes, I thought, the polite version of, "You're not good enough for our social circle." Instead, he said, "I need to ask you something rather important, and I apologize if this seems abrupt." "Okay," I said slowly. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. Then he turned it toward me, showing me a photograph. A bald eagle, young, maybe 2 years old, sitting in what looked like a veterinary clinic, one wing hanging at an odd angle. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. I studied the image, my professional instincts kicking in immediately. "Looks like a radial fracture. The wing is definitely broken. Given the angle and the swelling, I'd guess it's a midshaft fracture, probably from a collision. Maybe a week old, based on the bruising pattern." His eyes widened slightly. "That's exactly right. Midshaft radial fracture from a collision with a power line. 1 week ago yesterday." "Is this a bird you're treating?" I asked, confused about why a thoracic surgeon would be involved with an injured eagle. "Not me personally, but yes. The bird is currently at the Cascade Wildlife Clinic, about 40 minutes from here. I'm on their board of directors, have been for 15 years. It's my way of giving back, supporting conservation work in the community." I blinked. "You're on the board at Cascade?" "I know their head of rehabilitation, Dr. Sarah Martinez. We've consulted on cases together." "Sarah is excellent," he agreed. "But she's currently dealing with a family emergency and had to leave town unexpectedly. The clinic is short-staffed, and this eagle, well, it's not progressing as well as we'd hoped." He swiped to another photo. The same bird, but the wing looked worse. More swollen, signs of infection. "The fracture isn't stabilizing properly," he continued. "The resident vet is good, but this is outside her area of expertise. She's been trying to reach Dr. Martinez, but Sarah won't be back for at least another week. Maybe more." He looked at me directly. "I know this is highly unusual, but would you be willing to consult on this case? Possibly even come to the clinic and evaluate the bird yourself. Sarah speaks very highly of your expertise with raptor orthopedics, and after talking with you tonight, I can see why." I stood there, stunned. Marcus's future father-in-law, the man my brother wanted to impress, the surgeon who sat on multiple prestigious boards, was asking for my professional help. Yes, I managed. "Of course. I'd be happy to help." He smiled, looking genuinely relieved. "Thank you. Would you be available tomorrow? I know it's Saturday, but the bird really can't wait much longer." "Tomorrow works. What time?" "Would 10 o'clock be acceptable? I'd like to be there as well, if you don't mind. I try to stay involved with the critical cases." 10 is perfect." He pulled out his business card, because of course he had business cards even at a family dinner, and wrote something on the back. "That's my personal cell number. The clinic address is on the front. Thank you again. This means a great deal to me." We walked back to the living room together. Everyone looked up as we entered. "Everything all right?" Patricia asked. "Perfectly fine," Dr. Chen said smoothly. "I was just discussing a professional matter with our guest here." Marcus perked up, assuming professional matter meant something about his work. "Oh, what kind of professional matter?" he asked eagerly. Dr. Chen smiled. "A consultation. There's a critical case at the wildlife clinic I'm involved with, and I've asked your sister for her expertise. She's graciously agreed to help." You could have heard a pin drop. Marcus's expression went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds flat. Confusion, disbelief. Something that might have been anger, then forced pleasantness. "Oh," he said weakly. "That's great. I didn't know you were involved in wildlife conservation," Vanessa said to her father, delighted. 15 years on the board at Cascade Wildlife Clinic, he said. "It's one of my passions. I've always believed that we have a responsibility to protect and preserve the natural world. People who dedicate their lives to that work are doing something truly important." He looked at me when he said that last part. Mom was practically glowing with pride. Dad had this subtle smile, like he knew something Marcus didn't. Patricia was asking Dr. Chen more about his conservation work. And Marcus just sat there, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling around him. His sister, the one with the not-real career, the one he'd tried to hide, the one he'd dismissed at every opportunity, had just been personally requested by his future father-in-law for her professional expertise. The irony was almost too perfect. We said our goodbyes around 10. Patricia hugged me, making me promise to send her the gallery show details. Dr. Chen shook my hand warmly and reminded me about tomorrow's appointment. Vanessa whispered that she was so excited we'd connected with her parents. Marcus barely looked at me. I was unlocking my car when I heard footsteps behind me. "We need to talk," Marcus said. I turned. He looked. I'm not even sure how to describe it. Angry, definitely. But also something else. Wounded, maybe. "What's up?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. What the hell was that in there? What was what? You know what, the whole performance. Going on and on about your degrees and your publications and your awards. You made me look like an idiot. I actually laughed. I made you look like an idiot. Marcus, I answered questions honestly, that's it. I didn't perform anything. You could have been more modest. You didn't have to list every single accomplishment. You mean I should have stayed quiet and small so you could feel bigger? His jaw clenched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You literally asked me to lie about what I do, to make myself less so you could be more. And when I didn't, when I just existed as myself, you're mad because suddenly I'm not the embarrassing little sister anymore? I never said you were embarrassing. You've been saying it for 8 years, Marcus. Maybe not in those exact words, but every time you dismissed my work as a hobby or a bird thing. Every time you emphasized how successful and important Vanessa's family is, with the clear implication that our family isn't. Every time you've introduced me to someone and then immediately changed the subject when they ask what I do. I was trying to help you, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I wanted you to think about your future, about stability. No, I cut him off. You wanted me to fit into your idea of what success looks like. And when I didn't, you decided my work didn't matter. That I didn't matter. That's not true. Then why did you ask me not to talk about my career tonight? Why have you spent years minimizing everything I do? Be honest, Marcus. Just this once, be honest. He was quiet for a long moment, looking at the ground. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, smaller. Because you always made it look so easy. You just knew what you wanted to do and you did it. You didn't care what anyone thought. You didn't care about impressing people or making the right connections or climbing the ladder. You just loved what you did, and that was enough. I stared at him, shocked. And he continued, I've been killing myself trying to build this perfect life. The right job, the right apartment, the right girl from the right family. Everything calculated and planned and optimized. And then there you are, doing exactly what you love, being successful at it. Not giving a damn about any of the stuff I thought mattered. His voice cracked slightly. And I realized tonight, watching you talk with Dr. Chen, that he respects you more in one dinner than he's ever going to respect me. Because what you do actually matters. It has meaning. And what I do, he laughed bitterly. I move money around and make rich people richer. That's it. That's my big successful career. I didn't know what to say. This was not where I'd expected this conversation to go. Marcus, I said finally, your career isn't meaningless. You work hard, you provide value. There's nothing wrong with what you do. I know. I guess I was jealous. And instead of dealing with that, I convinced myself that you were the one doing something wrong. That your path was the irresponsible one. It was easier than admitting that maybe I chose the safe, impressive path instead of the one that would have actually made me happy. What would have made you happy? I asked softly. He smiled sadly. I wanted to be a teacher, high school history. I loved it when I was student teaching in college. But Dad was so proud when I got that finance internship. And the money was so good. And everyone said I'd be stupid to give it up for teaching, so he shrugged. Here we are. We stood there in the cool night air, the crickets chirping in the Chen's perfectly manicured bushes. It's not too late, I said. You know that, right? People change careers all the time. With a wedding to pay for? A mortgage? Vanessa's expecting a certain lifestyle. Have you talked to Vanessa about it? About what? About being unhappy. About wanting to teach. About any of this. He looked uncomfortable. No, how can I? Her dad's a renowned surgeon. Her mom runs a successful nonprofit. I can't tell her I want to be a high school teacher making 40 grand a year. Marcus, I said gently, if Vanessa loves you, she'll want you to be happy. And if she doesn't, then maybe… Don't, he said quickly. Just don't. We were quiet again. I'm sorry, he said finally, for how I've treated you. For what I said at Mom and Dad's dinner. For all of it. You were right. I was trying to make you smaller so I could feel bigger. That was shitty of me. Yeah, I agreed. It was. Are we okay? I considered this. We weren't okay, not really. You don't undo 8 years of dismissiveness with one parking lot apology. But it was a start. We're working on it, I said. He nodded, accepting that. Then something occurred to him. The eagle, he said. The one you're consulting on tomorrow. Can you actually help it? I thought about the photos Dr. Chen had shown me. The fracture pattern, the swelling, the signs of infection. I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to try. That's pretty cool, he said. What you do, it's actually really cool. Thanks, Marcus. I mean it. I was in there tonight listening to you talk about air sacs and migration patterns and vitamin K therapy, and I realized I have no idea what you actually do every day. I've been so busy dismissing it that I never bothered to actually understand it. Well, I said, pulling out my phone, if you really want to understand it. I scrolled through my photos and found one from last month's release. A rehabilitated red-tailed hawk in my gloved hands, wings spread wide, just about to take flight. The morning sun catching its feathers, the fierce intelligence in its eyes. I showed it to him. Marcus stared at the photo for a long moment. Wow, he said quietly. That's wow. Her name was Rosie. She came in with a broken wing from a car collision. 3 months of rehabilitation. When we released her, she flew straight up into a thermal and just soared. Like she'd never been injured at all. "You did that," he said, looking at me. "You made that possible." "Yeah," I said, feeling that familiar warmth in my chest that came from talking about the work I loved. "I did." He handed back my phone. "I really am sorry. For not seeing this. For not seeing you. I know. Will you tell me about it sometime? Really tell me, not just the surface stuff." "Yeah," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "I'd like that." He nodded, then started walking toward his car. Vanessa was probably wondering what was taking so long. "Hey, Marcus?" I called after him. He turned. "You should talk to Vanessa about teaching, about what you really want. You might be surprised." He gave me a small smile. "Maybe." "Also," I added, "your fiancée is amazing, and her parents are lovely people. You didn't upgrade, Marcus. You got lucky. Don't screw it up by pretending to be someone you're not." "Noted," he said. "See you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow?" "At the clinic. I want to see you work, if that's okay." I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of something that could become forgiveness, given time. "Yeah," I said. "That'd be okay." I arrived at Cascade Wildlife Clinic at 9:45 the next morning. Dr. Chen was already there, standing in the parking lot with someone I recognized immediately. "Dr. Martinez?" I said, confused. "I thought you were out of town." Sarah Martinez smiled, looking tired but happy. "I was. Family emergency resolved faster than expected. I got Dr. Chen's message last night and drove back early this morning." "But then you don't need me," I said, though I felt oddly disappointed. "Actually," Dr. Chen said, "we do. Sarah and I discussed it, and we'd like you to take lead on this case. With Sarah's assistance, of course." Sarah nodded. "I've seen your work with radial fractures. You've got a better success rate than anyone in the region. This bird deserves the best shot we can give it." I looked between them, understanding dawning. "You could have handled this yourself," I said to Sarah. "Even with the family emergency, this was, what, a test?" "Not a test," Dr. Chen said quickly. "An opportunity. For you and for the bird. Sarah's been telling me for months that we should bring you on as a consultant for our difficult cases. Last night seemed like the perfect chance to make that happen. Plus," Sarah added with a grin, "from what Dr. Chen told me about dinner, it sounds like you gave quite the impression. He called me at 11 last night, going on about this brilliant raptor specialist. I had to tell him I'd been trying to recruit you for a year." I felt my face heat. "He did not call you at 11. 10:45. Dr. Chen corrected with a straight face. "I'm not a complete barbarian." Sarah laughed. "Come on, let's go save an eagle." The bird was in an intensive care unit, isolated to reduce stress. When we entered, it fixed us with that fierce, yellow-eyed stare that bald eagles are famous for. It was young, probably only 2 years old. Still had some brown mottling in its plumage, but even injured and stressed, it was magnificent. "Hey there, beautiful," I said softly, approaching slowly. "Let's see what we can do for you." I spent the next hour examining the wing, reviewing x-rays, discussing treatment options with Sarah and the resident vet. The fracture was worse than the photos had suggested. Not only was the radius broken, but there was beginning to be significant bone loss at the fracture site. Infection had set in. "If this was last week," Sarah said quietly, "I would have recommended euthanasia." "But it's not last week," I said, studying the x-rays, "and I think we have a shot." I explained my plan. A surgical approach to clean the infection, stabilize the fracture with a different configuration of pins and external fixation, aggressive antibiotic therapy, and a specialized physical therapy protocol I'd developed. It was risky, complicated, no guarantees, but it was a chance. Sarah agreed. So did Dr. Chen, who'd been watching the whole consultation with intense focus. "When can you do the surgery?" he asked. "Today, if Sarah's willing to assist." "I'm in," Sarah said immediately. We prepped, sterilized equipment, anesthetized the bird. And then, for 3 hours, we worked. It was delicate, precise work. Every movement calculated, every decision critical. Dr. Chen watched the entire surgery from the observation window. I'd catch glimpses of him, standing, perfectly still, completely focused, like he was in his own operating room. At one point, I had to make a call, whether to remove a small piece of damaged bone or try to save it. The conservative approach would be safer, but less likely to succeed long-term. The aggressive approach had more risk but better outcomes if it worked. I chose aggressive. Sarah didn't question it, just handed me the tools I needed and helped me execute. 3 hours and 20 minutes after we started, we were done. The wing was stabilized, the infection cleared, the bird was stable. Now we just had to wait and see if it would heal. We stepped out of the surgical suite to find Dr. Chen still at the window. "How did it go?" he asked immediately. "As well as we could hope for," I said, exhausted. "The next 48 hours will tell us if the fixation holds and the infection stays clear. If those go well, we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks of intensive rehabilitation before we can even think about release." "But there's a chance," he said. "There's a chance." He nodded, satisfied, then he looked at Sarah. "I want to officially offer the consultant position to her. Whatever it takes to make that happen." Sarah grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." They both looked at me. "Wait, what?" I said eloquently. "We need a Raptor specialist on retainer," Sarah explained. "Someone we can call for difficult cases, someone who can train our staff, someone who can develop better protocols. The position comes with a significant stipend, medical benefits, and access to all our facilities for your own rehabilitation work." "It would be part-time," Dr. Chen added. "We understand you have your own organization and commitments, but having you available even a few days a month would be invaluable." I stood there, still in my surgical scrubs, blood under my fingernails from where I'd been handling the eagle, exhausted from the stress and focus of the surgery. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time when it came to my work and my family. Valued. Not just competent, not just useful. Valued. I started, then had to clear my throat. "I would be honored." Sarah hugged me. Dr. Chen shook my hand with that same firm, measured grip. "Welcome to the team," he said. I texted Marcus as I was leaving the clinic. "Surgery went well. Bird has a fighting chance." His response came immediately. "That's amazing. I'm still here. Stayed to watch through the window. You were incredible." I walked back into the observation area and found him there, sitting in one of the chairs, staring at the unconscious eagle in its recovery cage. "You stayed the whole time?" I asked. "Yeah, couldn't look away. That was..." He shook his head. "I had no idea. What you do, the skill involved, the pressure. That was like watching a heart surgeon, except somehow more intense because the patient can't tell you if something hurts." "It's different," I agreed, sitting next to him. "But yeah, the stakes are just as high." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the eagle's chest rise and fall with each breath. "Dr. Chen offered me a position," I said, "consulting here regularly." Marcus smiled. "Of course he did. You earned it." "I'm sorry," I said suddenly. He looked at me confused. "For what?" "For throwing my accomplishments in your face last night. At dinner. I could have been more subtle, I don't know. I was so defensive that I went on the offensive, and that wasn't fair either." "Are you kidding?" he laughed. "You were perfect. You weren't bragging or showing off. You were just existing, being yourself. And I realized I'd never actually let you do that before. I was always trying to shrink you down or explain you away." "We both could have handled things better," I said. "Maybe. But I'm the one who spent years being a dick about your career. You were just finally done taking it." He turned to face me more fully. "I talked to Vanessa last night, after we got home." "Yeah?" Told her everything, about wanting to teach, about hating finance, about being jealous of you, all of it. And she looked at me like I was an idiot, which, fair, and asked why I'd never mentioned it before. Turns out her mom taught high school English before she started the nonprofit. Vanessa thinks teaching is an incredibly noble profession. She didn't care about the money. He ran a hand through his hair. She cared that I was lying to her, that I was pretending to be someone I'm not. She said if I wanted this marriage to work, I needed to start being honest about who I actually am, not who I think I should be. "She sounds smart," I said. "She's terrifyingly smart. It's part of why I love her." He paused. "I'm going to do it. After the wedding, after things settle, I'm going to look into teaching programs. Maybe not full-time right away, but I'm going to start moving in that direction." "Good," I said. "You'll be great at it." "You think?" "I think anyone who spent 8 years trying to make me into something I'm not has a pretty deep understanding of how to shape and mold people. You just need to use that power for good instead of evil." He laughed, a real laugh. I deserved that. "You did." The eagle shifted slightly in its recovery cage, and we both held our breath, but it was just readjusting, still unconscious. "What are its chances?" Marcus asked quietly. "Really?" "Honestly, 50-50, maybe 60-40 if we're lucky. The next few days are critical, but I've seen worse cases pull through. Sometimes they surprise you." "I hope it makes it." "Me too." My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "How did the surgery go? So proud of you, sweetheart." Followed immediately by one from Dad. "Marcus told us about the consulting position. We always knew you were special." I showed Marcus the texts. He smiled. "I told them this morning, about what happened last night, about the surgery, about the job offer. I thought," he hesitated, "I thought they should know how amazing their daughter actually is." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thanks, Marcus. I mean it, and I'm going to do better. No more dismissing your work. No more bird thing comments. I'm going to actually learn what you do and support you the way I should have been doing all along." "I'd like that." We sat there for a while longer, watching the eagle breathe. Two siblings who'd been at war for 8 years, finally finding something like peace. 6 weeks later, I stood in the clinic's outdoor flight enclosure with Sarah, Dr. Chen, Marcus, and Vanessa. The eagle, who we'd started calling Phoenix because of course we had, was perched on a platform, wing fully healed, strength returned. It had been a long recovery. There'd been setbacks and complications, 1 week where we thought we'd lose it. But the bird had fought, and we'd fought alongside it. And now it was ready. "You should do the release," Sarah said to me. "You sure?" "It's your bird, your surgery, your success." I approached Phoenix slowly, wearing my heaviest gloves. The bird watched me with those fierce eyes, and I swear there was recognition there. "Ready to go home?" I asked softly. I lifted the bird gently, walked to the open part of the enclosure, and raised my arms. For a moment, Phoenix just sat there, wings folded. Then, with a powerful thrust, it launched. Wings spread wide, 8 feet of pure power and grace, catching the air. It circled once, twice, gaining altitude. And then it was gone, disappearing into the blue sky, free. I realized I was crying. So was everyone else. "You did it," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You actually saved it." "We saved it," I corrected. "Sarah and I and the whole team." But Sarah shook her head. "That was all you. That surgical approach, that fixation configuration, that rehab protocol, That was your expertise, your skill. Own it. Dr. Chen was smiling, looking up at the empty sky where Phoenix had disappeared. Remarkable, he said. Absolutely remarkable. Later, after we'd said our goodbyes, after Sarah had officially made me part of the team, after Dr. Chen had mentioned 3 other clinics that wanted to talk to me about consulting, Marcus pulled me aside. I have something to tell you, he said. Okay. I applied to a post-bac teaching program. I got accepted. I start in the fall. I hugged him without thinking. Marcus, that's amazing. It's going to be tight financially. I'll have to keep working while I do the program. The wedding's going to be smaller than we planned. But Vanessa's on board. Her parents too, actually. Dr. Chen said he wishes more people had the courage to pursue meaningful work over lucrative work. He would know, I said. Yeah, Marcus smiled. He's pretty great, isn't he? I can see why Vanessa turned out so well. You chose well, I agreed. I really did. He paused. Hey, so Vanessa and I were talking about the wedding party. Yeah? I know traditionally the maid of honor is the bride's best friend or sister, but Vanessa's an only child, and her best friend is going to be a bridesmaid, so... He looked nervous. Would you be willing to give a speech at the reception? About us, about family, about, I don't know, whatever you want to say. I blinked. You want me to speak? At your wedding? I know I don't deserve it, after how I've been, but I can't imagine getting married without you being part of it in a real way. Not just standing there, but actually being present, being acknowledged. I'd be honored, I said, meaning it. Really? Really. He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel awkward or obligatory. It felt like having a brother again. The wedding was beautiful. Small and intimate, like Marcus and Vanessa had decided. Just family and close friends. In a garden instead of a ballroom. Meaningful instead of impressive. Dr. Chen walked Vanessa down the aisle, and I saw Marcus's eyes fill with tears. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. Mom and Dad sat in the front row, holding hands like teenagers. And when it came time for the reception speeches, Marcus introduced me. My sister, he said into the microphone, is the most remarkable person I know. And I'm ashamed to say it took me way too long to realize that. He told the story of the dinner, of the eagle, of watching me work. She saves lives, he said simply. Real, actual lives. She makes the world better just by being in it. And I spent years trying to convince her that wasn't enough. That she needed to be something different, something more legitimate. He looked directly at me. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. And I'm so grateful that she gave me the chance to be better. I walked to the microphone with my heart pounding. Thank you, Marcus, I said. That means more than you know. I looked out at the gathered guests. I'm not going to tell you that my brother and I have always had a perfect relationship. We haven't. We've had years of misunderstanding and hurt feelings and fundamental disagreements about what matters in life. I smiled at Vanessa. But then Marcus found Vanessa and Vanessa's family. And through them, he found the courage to be honest about what he really wanted. To admit that the path he'd been on wasn't making him happy. To choose meaning over money, fulfillment over prestige. I turned to Dr. Chen. Sir, you told me once that people who dedicate their lives to meaningful work are doing something truly important. You were right. But it's not just about the work itself. It's about having the courage to pursue it, to own it. To believe that it matters even when the world tells you it doesn't. I looked back at Marcus and Vanessa. You two are starting a life together. And if I can offer any advice, it's this. Be honest. About who you are, what you want, what scares you. Don't spend years trying to be the person you think you should be. Just be the person you actually are. Because that's the person worth loving. My voice cracked slightly. Marcus, you're finally being that person. And Vanessa, You love him enough to encourage it. That's what marriage should be. Not two people trying to impress each other, but two people helping each other be brave enough to be themselves. I raised my glass. To Marcus and Vanessa, may your life together be filled with honest conversations, meaningful work, and the courage to always choose authenticity over appearance. To Marcus and Vanessa, everyone echoed. Later, as the party wound down, Dr. Chen approached me. That was a lovely speech, he said. Thank you, and thank you for everything you've done. For the opportunity at the clinic, for seeing value in my work, for— Stop, he said gently. I didn't give you anything you hadn't already earned. I simply recognized expertise when I saw it. Something your brother should have done years ago. He paused. Though I admit, I had an ulterior motive in asking for your help that first day. Oh? Sarah had been telling me about your work for months. I wanted to see for myself if you were as good as she claimed. The eagle gave me the perfect excuse. I laughed. So it was a test. An evaluation, he corrected with a smile. One you passed spectacularly. The consulting position was always on the table. I just needed to confirm you were the right person for it. Well, thank you for the evaluation and the opportunity. Thank you for saving Phoenix. And for being a good influence on my future son-in-law. He's a different person than he was 3 months ago. More authentic, more content. I suspect you had something to do with that. I think Vanessa had more to do with it. Perhaps. But sometimes family has to break us down before love can build us back up. He smiled. Speaking of which, my wife wants your information for the fundraising gala we're hosting next month. Wildlife conservation focus. She thinks your photography will be perfect for the auction. I'd be happy to contribute. Excellent. And bring a guest, please. Marcus tells me you've been so focused on work that you haven't had time for a personal life. I felt my face heat. Did he really say that? He may have mentioned it. Big brothers worry, even when they're reformed. He winked and walked away to find Patricia. 6 months after the wedding, I got a call from the clinic. There'd been a sighting of Phoenix. A photographer had captured an image of a young bald eagle with distinctive markings, a small white patch on the left wing where the feathers had grown back slightly differently after the surgery. The eagle was hunting successfully. Had found a territory, was thriving. I drove out to the area where it had been spotted, more out of sentiment than any real hope of seeing it. But there, soaring over a lake, I saw it. Phoenix. Wings spread wide, riding the thermals, completely and utterly free. I took out my camera, always have it with me, and captured a few shots. Not for publication, just for me. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Mom said you went to look for the eagle. Did you find it? Yeah, it's doing great. That's awesome. Hey, you free for dinner this week? Vanessa and I want to run something by you. Sure, what's up? I'll tell you at dinner. But we might need an aunt soon. If you're interested in the position. I stared at the text, then looked back up at Phoenix. Life had a funny way of working out sometimes. The bird I'd saved was free. My brother had found his path. And I had finally found my place, not just in my career, but in my family. Not because I'd changed who I was, but because I'd refused to. I texted back. Best consulting position I've ever been offered. I accept. Looking up one last time, I watched Phoenix disappear into the clouds, and I smiled.